I used to be fun, excited about life, and always up to something. But at some point, I found myself just trying to keep up with chores and find time slots in the calendar for my friends, and feeling suffocated by my student loans. I desperately wanted freedom and to feel alive again, but I didn't know how to create it. Like most kids, I used to believe that I could be and do anything in life, and that I definitely wouldn't be anything like the boring adults around me. When I was around 12, I got my first digital camera, and from that moment it was glued to my hands. I always asked and sometimes forced my family and friends to either be characters in my movies or objects in my photography to help bring my vision to life. And when I wasn't photographing, I was scrapbooking, gluing pictures, cutting out images from magazines, and writing text to accompany the photos. And then when I was about to start university, it was a natural choice to study engineering. It was the reasonable, realistic thing to do, because you obviously couldn't make money from art, I was told. And besides, I was apparently somewhat smart, so I shouldn't waste my potential. So I put my camera in a box along with other unimportant hobbies such as dancing and writing, and put it in the attic. Not knowing that this very act would, apart from making me really good in math and at writing reports, leave me feeling completely hollow inside, drained and paralyzed by social anxiety. Not knowing that creativity wasn't found in the camera or in the pen that I could simply hide away, but something that was a core part of who I was. This made it particularly difficult to blend in among my engineering peers, as my creative tail was stubbornly sticking out underneath my skirt, making them laugh. It wasn't until life smacked me really hard in the face that I had no other choice but to quit, to change, to recognize the disaster. I wanted to be free, feel alive again, and live life on my terms. But I had devoted almost 10 years to this new occupation, and anytime I thought about doing something different, I was filled with fear of the potential judgment from my old colleagues and crippled with self-doubt. Who was I to believe that I could pursue those silly childhood fantasies? And the thought of being watched failing and having to crawl back saying that they were right made me shut down the dream immediately. However, I later discovered that the subconscious mind always wants you to stay in the familiar, regardless of whether that is good or bad for you. Because the familiar is predictable, and predictability increases the chances of survival. And to keep you alive is its core task. It's not wired to look for ways to make you thrive, so it will always choose a familiar hell instead of an unfamiliar heaven. And it will try to stop you from changing in any way possible, either loudly by bombarding you with worst case scenarios, or subtly like, let's just read one more book on the subject first, or just start tomorrow. So the first step was to recognize that those fears that were stopping me from following my passion might not even be real, but just the mind's fear of change, any change. And that I had to work through those fears instead of being intimidated by them. And I needed to remind myself of who I used to be before I left my essence in the attic, and reconnect with her boldness and wildness. And I realized that I missed her so much, and that I owed it to her to bring her to life again. And the only way to bring her to life was to honor her desires, to let her immerse herself in interests that made her eyes spark, and to let her intuition guide our next step, even if it didn't follow a predictable 5-year plan. I don't know if you've heard the story about the two frogs or I think it was a story about several frogs that were doing a race, and they were surrounded by a huge crowd, and the crowd was shouting at them like, it's too difficult, you can't make it, because they were running up a steep hill. And, one frog at a time, just dropped off eventually because it was so hard. So they were like, yeah, it is too hard. But eventually there was one winner. It was one frog that made it, and everyone was like, how did you do it? And it turned out that this frog was deaf. He couldn't hear. And the moral of the story is that you should not be impacted by others' opinions and negativity, because that will impact how you perform and what you believe is true, and you might not even give a chance to what you really want to do in life. And I think that story is so powerful. It has really stuck with me for all these years since I heard it, and it's so interesting to me how, you know, when we are children, we believe so deeply in ourselves, and you know, a child is not second guessing if they can do something. They're like, I can do it. You know, they dream so big. They don't even, when they say they want to be an astronaut, they think it's just as reasonable as being someone who works in a shop or whatever. And I love that so much. And I think our role as adults is to strip away all the false beliefs and the paradigms and everything that we've been taught is true about the world and about our own ability, so that we can find our essence again, because we are inherently capable. And I think, you know, our caretakers, we're just giving advice to their best ability, but it's our role now as adults to say, like, I have the innate ability to do what I desire, and that my desires and my inspirations and my intuition will guide me to the right place. And I, for me at least, when I started living more in alignment with me and be like, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to, this is how I want to live my life. And it's never, well, it might change, but it's not, like, the essence of me will never change. And the best thing I can do is to honor that. And the more I honor that, the less resistance there is in life. And I think that's true for so many. And it doesn't mean that we have to be reckless and be like, quit our jobs and, you know, have no savings and do whatever. We can still have a job, but take our dreams seriously and start pursuing what we have neglected. I think it's so fucking important to our well-being. Yeah. So now I'm calling myself the unicorn cousin online, and I've made art, dance and video making a part of my life again. It took an insane amount of courage to do that, but the irony is that after a while the subconscious mind gets used to this new reality too, and it starts to feel familiar to it as well. So it realizes that it wasn't so dangerous to follow your dreams and showing who you are after all. And I know that even if I don't succeed in any of my endeavors in the eyes of society, it will still be worth the pursuit, because I will have lived a full life. I will have expressed what my soul needed to express, and I will have fulfilled my purpose. So let me ask you this. What dream or passion have you left in the attic in the pursuit of the realistic thing? And how different would you feel if you brought your younger self to life again? I believe that those dreams were planted in you as a seed for you to bring them to fruition, because you have what it takes to do so. And following our dreams and passions isn't a naive, reckless endeavor, but rather the portal to live a full life in alignment with ourselves. And when we do that, we'll do a lot of good in the world.